Hi, and welcome back to Pokemon Ecology. Today, we're going to be looking at Chimchar, Monferno, and Infernape, as well as their reason for absence from modern Sinnoh. A much larger video is planned, covering Hisui's ecological collapse in full, but that one's going to take some time to make. For now, enjoy the sort of sneak peek featured later in this video. Before we get started, let's see what the drone camera picked up. The head, as always. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot for me to mention here. The mouths are quite a bit similar to chimpanzee mouths, which has many threatening looking teeth. Considering behaviors I'll bring up later, they're likely to be carnivores, which is actually unlike chimpanzees. The large ears on their head of course denote a focus on hearing. Many of Sinnoh's inhabitants are capable predators vying for top dog in the area, so these large ears are likely more for keeping themselves safe from other members of their species and potential predation from other species by hearing for anything sneaking up on them. Curiously, as Monferno develops into Infernape, this flame used for intimidation moves from their tails to the tops of their heads. This is a curious development. Monferno's tail flame and the blueness of its face indicate rank in their family structure, but Infernape seems to have cut out the middleman, so to say, and moved the dominance display from the tail to the head. It is unknown why such a development occurs, but it's believed that this allows the lungs to act as a bellows for the flames during battle. While Monferno is able to swing its tail to spray embers, Infernape can embolden the flame into a giant, quite threatening inferno. Infernape's fiery crown is made by igniting specialized, near ever-burning hairs, the same on the ends of the tails of Chimchar and Monferno, with the tail, using the same mechanism as the younger form, but without igniting the end. Then, and this is uncertain, the sinuses, airways, respiratory system in general are in some way vented towards the head, allowing them to expel air into their fires. A large head overall, at least normally, would denote intelligence and bite force among other things in many species, but not all. And here, while bite force is likely present, the large eyes and ears of the species would take up a large amount of real estate in the cranium. Essentially, what I'm saying is that these Pokemon are likely not smart. While this is true for many of the Pokemon I've researched, the similarities to primates might initially push one to assume great intelligence. That can be true anyway, as there are some animals with great investment into specific senses that still have great intelligence about them. Something like a gorilla, very topically, has very large noses and eyes, but still has quite a bit of intelligence to them. Let me know what you all think. Moving on to the body. The arms of the evolution line are very long. This has a few benefits. Firstly, climbing is central to their lifestyle. It's readily observed that the entire line will climb to attack from above both predator and prey, and they live atop cliffs and mountains where they're safe from predators. These Pokemon live around very threatening species, most of whom cannot fly. Secondly, and tying in with what I just said, the reach and space for arm muscles helps them take on or at least fight off some of their larger opponents. While a Monferno or Infernape may not be able to win a fight against some of these threatening Pokemon, they should be able to fight hard and safe enough to make their hunt seem too dangerous or too fruitless to continue. Inside the abdomen of the evolution line is a gas-producing organ that fuels their fires. In Chimchar and Monferno, the gas tubes mainly run through the tail and ignite specialized hairs on the tip, but Infernape has such hairs on top of their head as well. The known purposes of these fires are numerous, but there are theories of other uses. It is known that the flames blaze in combat to make the Pokemon appear bigger, and afterwards, the tail is swung around to dissuade attackers, even using it as a weapon should the intimidation fail. Infernape will even spin around to surround itself in fire to achieve the same results as their younger forms. The flames also dim or embolden based on mood and health of the Pokemon. An unwell member of the species will have much weaker flames, while a cheery, energized member will have large, healthier flames. As for theorized purposes, there are two major ideas. 1. Communication. The line has not been observed doing this, but it's possible that the control of the strength of the fire in their tails allows for long-distance vision-based communication for many purposes. Considering their agility, they may use this to silently coordinate attacks and ambushes on prey. It is unknown whether the species utilizes the adaptation this way, however. 2. Cooking. Due to the gases burning in their belly, the line likely has a calorie-intense diet. Cooking will be a great way to draw more fuel out from their food, so to say, much like it does with humans. Just like with communication, the line has never been observed doing this. If you couldn't tell, it's very hard to study Chimchar. Their hostile habitats and territorial nature make attempts at research costly and dangerous. The legs and feet of this species are crucial to their interactions with both other species and the environment. Their nests require climbing to reach. They jump from, cling to, and launch off all sorts of surfaces, and they bound around a lot in combat. That being said, there isn't much to say here despite their importance to Chimchar's biology. The legs rotate around and move almost identically to arms, and the feet have similar dexterity to hands. Aside from the ignition element of their tail, there's also the importance of balance to such an acrobatic species, but again, there's little to mention that hasn't already been mentioned. So now, let's talk about one of the biggest reasons why they have such a focus on balance and leg work: their habitat. Running through their habitats, we have a toxic bluff once home to an oil drilling operation, 3 different volcanoes, an icy mountain, and the relatively tame obsidian fieldlands. All of these habitats are rocky, tall, and most of them are varying levels of hostile to life. I cannot test Hisui's soil and water, but from what we know of the geological history of the land, the wildlife was dangerous and the water was notably mineralic and full of a lot of iron. It's not impossible that the toxic elements of these areas are actually what fuel the gases in their belly, or perhaps assist in or substitute its creation, meaning their diets can be much less calorie intensive than I'd initially thought. This would also explain their absence from the detoxified and overmined Sinnoh. More on that later though. Their habitats' terrain's contents are toxic, but its shape also tends to be rough, thus harder to navigate for many Pokemon species. Their legs and tail allow them easy mobility up and down the shelves of the highlands or mountains on which they find themselves, and this also provides ready escape from most of the threatening predators that share these spaces with them. However, such hostility would mean food's harder to come by, as the plants are sparser, and many of the other Pokemon fight back readily, or sometimes even attack first. Fortunately, the Chimchar line has 2 excellent protections against this. Chimchar tend to hide in bushes while older members of the species are out getting food, and a pack hierarchy system implies group hunting tactics. The pack hierarchy seems to be based, at least partially, on the health of the individual in some capacity, but there may be a bloodline element to it as well. The blue of a Monferno's face and the size of the flame on their tail show that their rank in a pack is higher, and the latter likely applies to Infernape's fiery crown. The fires produced on the tail will actually grow to match their health, and many animals lose quality of coat appearance when unhealthy, leading one to believe that evolution, in the broad sense, has pushed this species to follow members who best survive in their harsh habitats. What's interesting is that this method of determining pack rule involves a lot less fighting compared to the many similar primate species, likely resulting from their living in such bad conditions. When food is scarce and predators are many, infighting would be troublesome to survival. This isn't to say fighting for dominance would never happen, but instead it likely occurs far less often. I've talked a lot about these supposed fearsome predators, but I've not directly stated any, so let's talk about that now. Remember, this species is absent from many of its native habitats, so much guesswork is involved with species interactions. In many of Chimchar's extant habitats, there are plenty of menacing Pokemon against which these Pokemon likely have little protection. Flying Pokemon like Staraptor, Charizard, Salamence, and maybe Skarmory take advantage of the Pokemon's aerial mobility, and maybe Skarmory take advantage of the Pokemon's aerial mobility to snatch it right out of the air. Pokemon like Golbat lurk in caves waiting for the pack to sleep before feasting. Pokemon like Magmortar, Tyranitar, and Aggron are large threats for the species. While the species as a whole can outmaneuver these grounded Pokemon, they are able to be chased away from prospective food sources by the imposing presence such Pokemon have. Carnivine may also lure hungry members of the species to their doom. However, many of these Pokemon have large nymphs and sometimes large eggs, making their nests excellent food sources. Other than these daring nest heists though, younger members like Chimchar or maybe lone Monferno would go for smaller prey, but considering their preference for more intense fights and threat displays, whole packs may seek larger targets. The few times this species finds themselves in a wooded habitat, Burmy and Wormadam make easy food for a Chimchar or a Monferno hiding away from a predator within a tree's canopy. Historic presence of Chimchar in southern Sinnoh hints they may have hunted Stantler and Napalm, both of whom have similar habitat preferences to the subject. Pokemon like Donphan and Camerupt have defenses placed directly on their backs in the form of defense and offense respectively, which helps to protect against the species' favorite aerial approaches. There are also two more complex theoretical interactions. Remember, the species has too little presence in the modern day for us to accurately study species interactions. First, Blaziken is fast and capable of going toe-to-toe with Infernape, so there may be territorial disputes between the two species. Both also have relatively high calorie needs, so they would struggle to occupy the same ranges. Second, Sneasel and Weavile are very wily hunters. It's possible that in the remote, snowy mountains where these Pokemon share habitat, Sneasel and Weavile wait in trees for the pack to separate, then attack lone Monferno or hiding away Chimchar for an easy meal. Unfortunately, like all starters seem to be, Chimchar is experiencing an ecological crisis as its habitats are vanishing. Toxic or otherwise near unlivable lands may be hostile to humans and many other creatures, but they're usually very unique ecosystems that support a lot of animals and sometimes even the earth itself. Swamps, for example, help purify water and mitigate flooding. In the case of a place like the Chroma Highlands or, according to geology, the Obsidian Fieldlands and much of Hisui, these places take in toxic gases or metals from the earth and hold on to them, keeping other areas clean. By removing such areas, these effects are lost. Not only are the animals and plants now without a home, but we must bear the brunt of what such ugly-seeming ecosystems held back. Sure, we can't live in these places, but we may not need to. We can just let them be, or even protect them, to keep rarer Pokemon like Chimchar or animals like herons around for future generations to marvel at. And that was the Chimchar line. Thank you all for watching, and thanks so much for the massive support on the previous video. Hopefully this one gets it as well. We've actually reached the point where my YouTube revenue pays for the thumbnails of these videos. Hopefully eventually I'll be able to pay for the actual editor, and then eventually I can do this full time, which would be fantastic. I might even up myself to a video a week if we can really get some money going. I have tons of ideas that I would love to put out there, and I would love to do this weekly. I just can't afford to right now. Hopefully, we see some growth and that happens. Thank you very much to all my patrons once again. You guys really help out on these videos, genuinely. I can't thank you enough with how much you've done. I just don't want to seem like I'm begging for money whenever I give those things. That being said, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.